Deep in the woodland frontier stands a colossal mountain. Madame Eightlegs lives within. The massive spider crawls out, her long limbs dragging over stone. The sound carries through the forest as she leaves to hunt. Hidden among the brush, Vikir watches her noisy departure without being seen. He has tracked her movements for days. By his estimate, she will not return for at least 2 hours. Now is his chance to see what waits inside. He leaps up the mountain and reaches the summit. At the top, he finds a wide opening. It drops into darkness. When he looks down, he realizes the mountain is hollow. He slips inside. Silk strands span the cavern. Vikir jumps from thread to thread, making his way down. Shapes line the walls, humans and beasts wrapped in web. Some look recent, others are left to rot, a silent warning to anyone who enters. The passage widens into a large chamber thick with web. He notices a cluster of eggs clinging to the wall, packed tightly among the webs. Vikir moves closer and takes one. It pulls slightly before coming free, the surface rubbery and cold in his hand. He wonders if these eggs are the reason there were so many spiders during the Dark Ages. Her brood. He slips the egg into his pouch but then freezes, sensing danger. Madame Eightlegs has returned. She looks down from the top of the lair as if searching for an intruder. After a moment, sensing nothing, she leaves again. Vikir stays hidden beneath a sheet of web, his breathing tight. He wonders if she really sensed someone and came back. Thanks to Silent Heel, she did not notice him. He decides to finish up and head back. Back in the village, the Valak tribe rebuilds their home. As they work, they talk about Vikir. He keeps disappearing into the woods, offering no explanation. No one knows what he's up to, though they tell themselves he must have a reason. The real problem is that Ayin hasn't seen him either. She stands outside his tent, worry on her face. She calls out, saying her mother told her he had been asking about Madame Eightlegs, and asks if he is planning to fight her. Her voice drops as she adds that Vikir lost his leg yesterday. She doesn't want him getting hurt too. From inside, Vikir tells her to come in. Ayin steps through the flap and looks around, surprised. Inside, the tent has been turned into a small workshop. Tools and samples spread across the space, all tied to Madame Eightlegs. Vikir stands before a board covered with records gathered from every tribe in the forest. He tells her he gathered these records himself, then collected a piece of her web, a scrap of her skin, and one of her eggs to study. Ayin stares, shocked. She asks if he really went to her lair, and if he truly plans to fight her. If that is his decision, she intends to go with him. Vikir refuses. She still has not recovered from the battle with Adhonai. She would only slow him down. He then tells her he will be leaving the woodlands soon. There are things he still must do, so he needs to return to the Baskerville domain. Ayin looks down. She says she expected as much. Vikir adds that once he finishes what he needs to do, it might not be so bad to return. Her eyes widen, caught off guard by his words. He lifts a lamp, resolve clear in his eyes. Before anything else, he must protect this place if he ever hopes to come back. The lamp lights the board beside him, a detailed plan. Vikir tells her he will hunt Madame Eightlegs, and that he will avenge Vakira as well. Ayin studies the plan. Hunt. No one else would dare use that word for Madame Eightlegs. She reflects on how he always managed to solve the problems no one else could. She faces him, her expression lifting into a bright smile, then asks if he knows he inspires people, that he gives them hope. She rests her hand on his, asking if they should have hope this time as well. Vikir tells her, of course. Later that night, deep in the forest, Vikir stands before a large lizard. The creature lunges. Vikir moves faster, slicing through one of its legs. The limb drops, but a new one takes its place almost at once, growing back before his eyes. So it's true. The creature can rebuild its body as long as the head remains, he thinks. He concludes this is the last skill he needs. A faint smile crosses his face as he looks up at the lizard, telling it to hand it over. Back in the village, Ahun finishes building a hut. His friends stare at the finished structure in surprise, asking when he suddenly became good at building. One of them asks if he really built it for Vikir. Ahun says Vikir is like a brother to him, so it only feels right that he should have a permanent home. The two laugh, reminding him he used to despise Vikir at first. Ahun tells them to shut up. He adds that thanks to Vikir, the village is starting to come back together. He tells them they should all go show it to Vikir. They head toward Vikir's tent, but he isn't there. Disappointment falls over them. They had wanted to see how moved he would be by their gesture. Ayen walks up behind them, saying there's no way Vikir would get emotional like that. A worried look settles on her face as she wonders if today is the day. She quietly asks the god of the woodlands to watch over him. Vikir stands at the base of Madame Eightleg's lair, looking up toward the peak. She should be asleep by now, he thinks. The perfect time to hunt. He has already imagined dozens of possible outcomes and how to respond to each. Now, the moment has come. The hunt begins. Inside, Madame Eightleg sleeps. Vikir slips in and begins to descend, silent under his silent heel skill. He approaches the massive spider and strikes first, using the sixth fang to slice off a leg. The spider jolts awake with a piercing screech as two new legs sprout where the one was cut, regrowing almost instantly. She lashes out. Vikir dodges, red light flashing against the walls as he rebounds and cuts through her legs again and again. Madame Eightleg shrieks and fires a burst of poison. Vikir slips aside, but a single drop touches his arm. The poison spreads quickly. He steadies himself. He hadn't wanted to resort to this, but he has no choice. He severs the arm before the poison can reach his shoulder. A moment later, a new arm sprouts whole again. The spider freezes, shocked. He asks her why she looks so surprised. He leaps across her silk and slashes again. More legs grow. He keeps cutting. She catches him with a massive limb, and his leg is torn away. He tumbles down her huge body, flesh already knitting itself back together as a new leg forms. The instant it finishes, he launches forward again, driving back into the attack. She catches him again, tearing off his arm, but he lands on his feet as another grows in its place. The strain is heavy, and even he can't keep this up forever. He looks at the madame and thinks she can simply keep growing without tiring. He grins and darts upward toward the entrance. She tries to follow, but her huge body, uneven with doubled limbs, slips, sending her crashing back down. Vikir watches from above, a grin on his face. Just as he expected, she can't climb any more. This is how he planned it. Her legs grow twofold. It looks like a god's blessing. But when only one side keeps growing new legs, it throws her off balance and stops her from climbing. She lashes out with webbing, yet Vikir slips aside without concern. He saw it coming. When studying her weaknesses, he learned ordinary fire did nothing. But with hellfire, she burns like firewood. Beelzebub ignites in his hand. He glances at the walls. Rotting corpses line the lair. As they decay, they release flammable gas. With so many bodies left here for so long, this place is like a giant tinderbox, he thinks. He jumps onto the head of a bloated ox bear. He tells her she grew careless, thinking she was at the top of the food chain. Now, she was the hunted. He drives hellfire into the ox bear's skull, triggering a massive explosion that rips through the mountain. While studying the madame, his thoughts drift back to his practical assessment. He remembers asking himself why the Cerberus had wandered so far from its territory and why the barbarians chased it away. Now he understands. As Madame Eightlegs expanded her territory, the tribe was forced to move outward to hunt, and in doing so, they pushed the hellhound even farther from its home. It was all connected. She had manipulated the situation, afraid of the hellfire those creatures carried. He smiles, realizing he'd had the answer all along, as he sets her lair ablaze. Vikir slips away from the blast and climbs down the mountain, watching fire burst from the peak. All he has to do now, he thinks, is keep her inside. She can't escape. Her webs will only burn if she tries to climb. She should slowly turn to ash in there. He only needs to wait. A hollow thump echoes from within the mountain. He turns as the side of the peak explodes outward. Smoke and dust roar up, and a shriek cuts through the chaos. Madame Eightlegs crawls free, furious. Acid rains down into the forest beneath her, burning into the trees. He wonders if her eyes were damaged by the fire. She crawled right past him without noticing, towering overhead. Standing directly beneath her, he studies her torso, noticing a split in the hard shell. He still has a chance, he thinks. He jumps up, vaulting from leg to leg as he climbs toward the damaged plate. He drives the sixth fang into the crack, but the blade glances off. The madam shrieks in pain. One strike wasn't enough, he thinks. He grits his teeth, ready to try again. Then the shell around her eyes splits and falls away as she molts, revealing fresh, repaired eyes beneath. She lashes out. Caught mid-air, he struck and sent flying through the trees. He crashes to the ground and lies there, breath ragged, realizing he underestimated her. He didn't know she could regenerate through molting. He looks down to find both his legs gone, and his body is too drained to regrow them. The madam approaches. He tells himself to get up. A voice rises beside him, cold and familiar. It demands to know what drove him to fight a monster like this. He should have left the woodlands long ago to fulfill his vow. All he should think about is revenge, the promise to kill Hugo. He looks up and sees a shimmering figure of his past self standing over him. It tells him coldly not to forget the promise they made. His severed head lay beside him, speaking with the same cold voice. It told him he had become slow and lazy since coming to the woodlands. It shouted for him to remember the hatred he felt for Hugo, to remember the blade when it pierced his neck. Vikir's thoughts drift back. His only reason for existing had been to carry out the missions given by his master. Success was everything, even if it cost him his life. That was what he had been taught from birth, and he obeyed. Pleasing his master was all that mattered. But when Hugo turned his back on him and had him executed, Vikir finally understood how worthless his life had been. His master threw him away like an unwanted mutt. His former self told him they must make Hugo suffer the same despair they felt in that moment. The head screamed that Vikir had ruined everything, that killing Hugo and the Baskervilles was the only reason Vikir van Baskerville exists. Vikir lay there on his back, staring up as he listened. Had he ever once thought of disobeying Hugo? There had been a moment, just one, when he thought about breaking away from the pack, but in the end, he kept following the leash around his neck. He had been nothing more than a well-trained hound. His teeth clenched. He told the voice to be silent, to stop trying to control him. He screamed that he would never let anything control him again. Yes, he had taken a vow to kill Hugo, but he wished he had made different choices back then. What he truly wanted was liberation. Madame Eightlegs closed in. A massive leg came down to impale him, but Vikir rolled aside at the last moment. He had decided he would take his revenge, but he would also protect the place he wished to return to. That was his choice, not anyone else's. He dragged himself upright and faced the spider. He ground his teeth and vowed to live by his own will. He told himself to get up and fight. Madame Eightlegs lunged again. He still couldn't regenerate. He was forced to crawl and pull himself away. He would not die here, he told himself. But just as her piercing leg came down, a blinding blue flash struck it, then another. Vikir looked up. Far in the distance, figures stood atop a ridge, glowing with aura. Ayen, the chief, and the warriors of the Valak tribe. Ayen stood beside her mother and shouted at Madame Eightlegs to leave her future husband alone. She cried out that they had come to fight with him, all of them. Ahun roared that Vikir was his brother and didn't need to face this alone. The warriors below echoed him, shouting that they must aid the hero of the woodlands. More Valaks raced across the forest floor, unleashing arrow after arrow at the spider. Vikir watched them, then he began to regenerate, thinking they never listen. Quietly, he thanked Ayin for saving him again, then rushed the spider, striking the weak spot once more. The blow bounced off, but he only dug his heels in harder. He would strike again, he thought, again and again. The spider slammed her legs down, shaking the ground as she tried to crush both Vikir and the Valaks. The warriors scattered, shouting not to give up. From a distant mountaintop, Aquila watched the battlefield. They had feared this monster for so long that they had forgotten. She was only a monster, not a god. She watched Vikir struggle and thought that this warrior had reminded them how to face their fears. Her eyes began to glow blue. Even if she bled out from her wounds, she would open the path for him. She drew her bowstring, gathering aura until it trembled. She aimed for the spider and whispered for Vikir to watch for the opening. The arrow flew. It slammed into the spider's side, enlarging the crack. Madame Eightlegs screamed as her body faltered. Vikir saw his chance. His eyes flared red as he launched forward, a blur ripping straight toward the madam. He struck the weak point again, using the first form, the deep piercing tooth. The blade tore through and carried him inside the spider's torso. Ayen's eyes widened, and she blurted out in disbelief, asking if he had actually gone inside her body. Inside, Vikir continued. The second form, biting tooth. The third, gashing tooth. The fourth, tearing tooth. The fifth, crushing tooth, ripping his way through the spider's insides. He swore he would no longer live like a shackled hunting dog. Then he unleashed the sixth form, the shattering tooth. Outside, the spider screamed in pain as Vikir tore her apart from within. Then, suddenly, she went silent. One of her eyes bulged, and Vikir burst out from inside her body. The tribe watched, stunned. Had he really cut his way out? Madame Eightlegs collapsed, and the forest fell into dust and silence. Vikir lay on the ground, exhausted, right in front of her. His body felt weak, his skin coated in poison. Her blood must be poisonous too, he realized, wincing as it burned into him. He looked back at the madam. Her cries were fading, growing thin. She would die soon, he thought. His vision began to darken. He needed to wash the poison off before it was too late. Beelzebub launched itself into Madame Eightlegs and began to feed. Time blurred. Through the haze, Vikir faintly heard Ayen's voice, and everything went black. Moments later, his eyes opened again. He told her he was fine. Thanks to Beelzebub devouring Madame Eightlegs and taking her poison skill, Vikir had become immune to poison. After the battle, the tribe held a great feast, celebrating as they ate the remains of Madame Eightlegs. Vikir sat among them, looking exhausted. How many days had they been celebrating now, he wondered. He eventually slipped away for a quiet walk. Ahead, he spotted Vakira, who jumped up happily at the sight of him. He asked the wolf how it was feeling, then told it he'd heard it had gained a new mate, beating off other males in the process. He congratulated it, rubbing its chin. He told the wolf it could rest easy now. Madame Eightlegs had paid for what she did to its leg. Vikir lifted his hand from the wolf and looked at it. After devouring the madame, the seventh form felt close. He could sense it. He might be able to use it, at least to some degree. It was still incomplete, but Hugo was also at the seventh form. Vikir thought he was making good progress toward his goal. He paused. He had accomplished everything he needed to do in the woodlands. He said aloud that it was time to return to Baskerville, as someone listened just out of sight. The day came for Vikir to leave. The tribe gathered to see him off, with the chief standing at the front. Vikir thanked her for giving him permission to go. Aquila replied that there was no reason to stop him. Once family, always family, she told him. Their ties would not break with distance. No matter where he went, he would forever be the leader of the Valak's hunting pack. Vikir smiled and thanked the chief. He glanced around, wondering where Ayan was. Not seeing her, he turned to leave. He said his goodbyes and set off toward the border. The tribe cheered as he walked, calling for him to reach out whenever he needed them. Others shouted the same. Ahun called out to him, a tear in his eye, telling him he was welcome back any time. His sister told him to keep in touch. Voices rose together, shouting farewell, crying out for their hero, as Vikir disappeared into the trees with a faint smile. When he reached the edge of the forest and stepped out near the border, he stopped. Ahead, Ayan waited. She asked if he was leaving. Vikir said nothing. She exhaled softly, then stepped toward him and handed him something wrapped in cloth. Vikir asked what it was. She told him it was called a nubis, the bow master Adonai once used. She had modified it so Vikir could use it. He looked at the weapon, realizing this must have been why she had been so busy lately. Then she reached up and fastened something around his neck. Vikir looked down, a collar with a broken chain. She explained she had heard him talking in his sleep about shackles and hunting dogs, so she made it for him. She told him he was no hunting dog. He never acted like one. He was a wolf who could not be chained. Vikir let out a quiet chuckle, saying he hadn't expected comforting words from her, and began to thank her. But before he could finish, she tugged on the broken chain and kissed him. She stepped past him, eyes shimmering, heading toward the forest. With her back to him, she said she had heard that this was how they said goodbye in the Empire. She added that, when they first met, she had been taller, and now he had grown much taller than her. She told him to stay safe on his journey and continued walking. Vikir called after her, telling her goodbye and that they would see each other again. His words made her stop. She wiped her eyes, still facing away. She looked back at him with a bright smile and said, "That's a promise."